Hello everybody and welcome back to RP-1. I'm pretty excited to continue today. We've got a couple things in mind. I want to continue our heavy satellites program. I want to keep pushing forward our rocketry. I don't want to focus solely on airplanes, but we are also going to take flight into the air once again, as you may have noticed from the title. The Funky Chicken will ride again, as I want to say thank you again to the helpful commenter who let me know that there is a way of fixing the broken planes in our storage. So yeah, today we are going to renovate the Funky Chicken and get it capable of a high altitude flight. And as you see from our list, we also have a Quicksilver 1.5 science rocket in the queue to hopefully pick up some residual science. Our contracts are to get a satellite into orbit. The Quicksilver 1.5 can't do that, but we will be building today the Quicksilver 2. As you see here in the hypersonic flight, we have access to a better cockpit that can go to higher altitudes, and that is what we are going to be utilizing today. Satellite era science gives us a lot of good things, a lot of new experiments that can get us a lot of new science. However, we're going to have to prioritize a different science node a little bit later today. So unfortunately, we'll have to cancel that research, but we'll get to that later. I want to move up the hypersonic flight science because I want to do that mission today, and so therefore I'm going to want access to it sooner. It's very important to balance out your science and to not be afraid to cancel it sometimes, cancel future research and change around what they're doing. So we're going to put that first and foremost, and that'll be available in November of this year. So as you see here, we've got a couple contracts. One's already chosen. The stratospheric research we already have marked. But this high altitude, reach 40 kilometers with a crewed vessel, is something we're capable of doing. So we're going to go ahead and grab this contract. And just to take a look at the heavy satellites program, we have a polar orbit contract selected as well as the first biological in orbit. So, but we'll have to work on that in a later episode. So for now, we're just taking a look at our KCT management screen and what we've got coming up. The combined is the best window to kind of hang on to, but sometimes it helps to go through the other things. So we're gonna grab the XP2 by accident. I want to grab the Funky Chicken instead, but as you see here, our plane is thoroughly destroyed. Let's go ahead and grab the Funky Chicken. I want specifically that one because it's more put together than the other one. The gear had a problem with being unable to retract, so we're just going to replace those gears entirely. Landing gears, excuse me, not just gears. And then also we're going to make a couple changes. One being, I want to use a better engine, and we need to change out the cockpit. For the Mark 1, I believe it's called. But this is rated for high altitude flight, not for re-entry, but might be rated for re-entry. I'm gonna have to look over the descriptions once again. Unfortunately, we can't change this out just yet. We can't save it because we don't have access to the hypersonic technology just yet. But we can go ahead and run a couple tests with this and see that it works. So that way, when we do end up making it for real, we know how to make it. So, moving on, we are now in the VAB, and we are going to be building the Quicksilver 2, which is going to bring an advanced biological capsule into orbit And for the time being, we're going to focus on trying to recover it as well. Obviously, that is the best way to utilize the advanced biological capsule sample. But in the long run, we are eventually going to just end up. Well, we'll show you when we get there. But for now, we got a heat shield on it. We've got an SRB to deorbit it in an incorrect direction, but we'll get there. We'll figure it out. That is the one thing about RP-1, and sometimes why it'll take a long time between episodes, is there is a significant amount of test flights that need to be done, and so many things can go wrong at any stage of the test flight. So sometimes you have to do a test flight over again just because either something went wrong with the rocket, or more often than not, I did something incorrectly. I didn't fly it right. Once again, obviously, MechJeb would be easier to kind of automate a lot of this process. But I also, in addition to my just confusion about the mod in general, I do enjoy flying by hand. But we'll get there. I just need to take a day to just do nothing but play around with MechJeb in a different save file, something that won't hinder this one. But anyways, we are using our I believe the AJ-10 is what it's called as our orbital stage. We've got our ullage motors and spin stabilization motors right there. Pretty simple stuff. Well, simple for RP-1, something much more complicated for the stock KSP. For those who may not know, the spin stabilization helps the rocket stay pointed towards its maneuver node. The SAS is not the same as in stock, so by spinning your craft, it keeps it kind of focused in one point, even if it's just a generalized point. And the ullage motors, I go into a lot more detail in previous RP-1 series when we first start doing this, but essentially liquid fuel and oxidizer is sloshing around in there once, just due to gravity, it pulls down to the bottom, so it's able to ignite pretty easily. But once you go sideways, then it is no longer at the intake point for the engines. And once you're in space, then it's just kind of a glob floating around in zero gravity. And if it's not near the engines there, once again, it can't go into the intake. So those tiny little motors push the craft forward, pulling all of that fuel either from the side of the tank to the back of the tank, or if it's floating around at 0 Gs, it pushes those globules all the way back to the intake part of the tank. So essentially, you need to be moving forward in some sense, or at least have gravity pulling directly downwards in some sense, in order for the fuel to ignite. So that is what I mean when I say ullage. That is the definition for that. So one thing is we are using the RD-108 for the center engine and the RD-107s for the side boosters. I like these ones. The RD-108 just has just slightly not enough thrust to weight ratio when we fill it to its max capacity, and so I like having the side boosters to compensate for that. As you see here, we have a thrust to weight ratio of 1.74, so that is more than enough and quite ideal to get off the launch pad. So we're going to go ahead and name this the Quicksilver 2. I'm pretty happy with the design of it. We need to throw on a near-Earth avionics core for the lifting stage, because we want to make sure we have full control of the rocket up until we get to higher altitudes. We don't need that on the upper stage, so we have science cores there. However, I will eventually choose to do a near-Earth avionics core for that orbital stage because it'll help out. As you see here, the center of lift was way higher than the center of mass. I was so used to this rocket having a lower center of gravity. However, because we added the orbital inner stage, the weight went a lot higher. So as you see here, yeah, we have got the controllable mass set to the amount for the upper stage of that craft because we want to be able to better control it. It's we could do it with a near Earth or with a science core. However, this just ended up in our test. This was what ended up working out a little bit better. So now we're going back into the R&D because I realized I'm going to need to prioritize the engines right now. As much as I would love to get better science, I'm going to have to cancel that. And that utilizing the 3 points of science we already had, that brings us to the 10, just barely enough to start unlocking 1958 orbital rocketry. I'm going to move it up in the queue, not above hypersonic flight because I am planning on doing that as well, so I think that'll be easier to get done. We'll be able to build the plane faster than the rocket, so we're going to keep that there. But with the 1958 orbital rocketry node now being researched, we can test flight with better engines, with a better AJ-10. Just because in this series, especially since we're doing heavy rocketry, I've just been leaning fully into bigger is better. And so I want to prioritize a better configuration on this first go around. There's no point in doing the bare minimum with it if we're going to need to do quite a bit with it for a while, and it's probably going to be a little bit before we can unlock 1959-1960s orbital rocketry. So if we're going to make any kind of longevity with this craft, it needs to be better than bare minimum. So we're adjusting to get more fuel to get the appropriate burn time for everything. We need to adjust for the larger mass size. And put it all back together. It was about this time that I realized that my SRB was pointing the wrong way if I wanted to deorbit it. Because the way that it is functioning right now, our heat shield would be pointed the opposite direction for the opposite direction of protecting ourselves. So it was during this test flight that I realized that. So we're going to go ahead and turn that around like we did on the Quicksilver 1.5. Have this funky little triangular looking thing, but we're going to test fly that soon enough. We're going to need to do a little bit better, be a little bit more efficient with our flight because we are just barely squeaking into orbit and not nearly enough, not high enough for the contract's apoapsis to be fulfilled. So instead of overburning, we're going to exactly burn the amount for our orbital stage. However, we are going to put a little bit of extra fuel in the lifting stage to hopefully bring us a little higher. So now we're just going to look over everything one more time and just make tiny minor adjustments until we are ready to put it into orbit. We do, however, want to make sure our staging is correct. There we go. So let's go ahead and do another test flight. And this is an important test flight because it makes me realize that, you know what? According to the contract, we don't need to return the advanced biological capsule. So, unfortunately, we're going to lose out on the good amount of science that we'd get from an advanced biological capsule in orbit. I was pretty unhappy about losing out on the science, but with the loss of the SRB and the parachute and the heat shield, this is a much lighter craft, a much lighter upper stage, and hopefully it'll have a much better time getting into orbit, because honestly, the science will be great, but the contract, the money, the reputation and confidence that would be gained by successfully completing the contract is currently worth more than the science, because we are starting to run into an issue with our funds. We're starting to run into an issue with our timeline of completing the program, and we may be going over time pretty soon. But anyways, let's go ahead and time warp to the Funky Chicken's launch. We wanted to get everything built before we started our missions, and thankfully we have. Now that we have access to the hypersonic technology, we can go ahead and put in the cockpit. I'm glad we did our test flights, because now we know all we need to do is make the adjustments we had planned for, and then we'll be good to go. Saves a lot of time. I did forget here which engine we were utilizing, so I go back and forth until I figure it out. I think I end up doing a test flight just to see if it was the same. And I don't normally do the simulations here, but I wanted to share this particular one. This was this was the lowest approach I've ever done in any Kerbal game. And the entire time I was just expecting to crash and burn, but yeah, well, you'll see. Just coming in very, very low, very flat, 200 meters per second, so pretty fast, but just barely hovering above. Gonna smack my tail right on there. I was expecting to catch a wave here. I was expecting to hit that, but nope. My downfall there is I tilted forward a little bit. I could have probably glided for a little bit longer, but coming back in, only 25 meters above the surface, bouncing again, and we came in that. I didn't hit the brakes. If I had hit the brakes, I'm sure we would have come in for a solid stop, but nope, not looking forward. Not looking possible today, but it was just a simulation, so nothing to worry about there. But just how low I came in, I wanted to include that because that was pretty fun. But yeah, we have our cockpit set. We have our engine picked. We have our engine picked. We have our engine picked. There we go. We have our engine. We have our engine picked, and then we'll be ready to fly. We're going to put the name of the plane, now that it is officially named the Funky Chicken. We're gonna try to smack that on the side of it. I was hoping to put it on the body of the plane, but unfortunately the way that the decal was going, it was only allowing me to put it on the cockpit. But nonetheless, that works nicely. It looks fun. And now that we have access to air brakes, it would be foolish not to include them. We did a test flight to make sure that all of those changes were the correct changes. And then as I go to save the edits, I'm like, oh, I need to unlock this part. So I go and I unlock that part, but we do not have enough funds to integrate. And that's when I look down in the corner, I'm like, oh, we have negative $1,000. It only costs $5,000, but we are in the red, so we're going to have to time warp our way until we can afford to make those changes. So there we go. We now are in the black. We've got 10,000, so we can afford it pretty easily. I do have to go back and make all those changes yet again, but this time we know exactly what we're going to do, so that's good. We're getting the high altitude science in the cockpit, but for some reason when we go to integrate it, it keeps telling us to check our electrical mount, and no matter how little we change it to, it was always giving us that warning. So I don't know what that was about. If you do, let me know in the comments, because I get that with the Mach 1 cockpit all the time. But anyways, I am talking through the launch of the Quicksilver 1.5, but this is just our pickup launch to get more science. The exact same kind of profile as in the last episode, except going eastward instead of north this time. And it also doesn't have the camera on it, I believe. Might have the camera on it, actually. But either way, this isn't for anything. This isn't officially sanctioned. There's no contract for this, so we are just kind of paying for it to hopefully give us a little bit of a leg up, because we're starting to run out of science yet again. And for the fact that we had to cancel the satellite era science tab is not great, because that is necessary to fix that science debt. So there we go. We dropped our side boosters, jettisoned our fairings, and we are now in the long haul of our ascent. We are not trying to make orbit here, so we are basically going to be heading up as much as possible. We're going to have a little bit of a tilt to better utilize our aerodynamic, the drag, but basically I just want to get this rocket as high as possible, make it spend as much time in space as possible to let the experiments collect as much data as possible, and then hopefully bring it back down safely to the surface using the heat shields, the backwards facing SRBs, and the parachute. I'm going to take a quick second and just note that a little bit later in the episode, I'm actually going to not really talk as much throughout the launches, just because we've done a lot of these before. A lot of it is the same sort of thing that we've talked about in previous episodes. And I just wanted to note, in case you haven't noticed, we have all new music since the start of the Janus project. We have gotten a whole bunch of new music. This channel has always used artlist.io to find some good, nice tracks that are usable, friendly, copyright free. Well, not copyright free. We do pay for the service to utilize all these songs, but I'm really happy that we did, because it's makes the videos a lot more fun, in my opinion anyways. And I hope you enjoy the effort that myself and my musical director finds all these different great tracks from Artlist, and I hope you enjoy them. And we downloaded a whole bunch of new ones, so you know, I know we've heard a lot of the same songs over and over on my channel here, so just wanted to point out, in case anyone didn't notice, that there's a whole bunch of new music. Unfortunately, I waited too long to fire our SRBs, and it just didn't slow us down in enough time. So we wasted that entire rocket, unfortunately. I wasn't going to restart the launch. I feel like it was more than appropriate for me to take that loss, because that was a user error on my part, and it was primarily because I just wasn't paying attention enough. Time warp too close to the surface, and just missed my mark. But so unfortunately, we didn't get any signs from that. So now it is time to train our pilot. I should have done this the moment we put in the plane, because now I'm realizing that we need to upgrade our astronaut complex. And for $30,000, it's actually more than we have. So I don't know how I was able to select it, but construction began, so I guess we'll pay for it over the course of the time that it takes to build it. And that is something that I will learn very much frustratingly later. As you see here, I'm at the top. I'm actually losing money, and we're losing money by the day, the month, but not the year. So at the end of the year, we'll make more money, but the problem is we are rapidly bleeding money. So I decide to go on yet another firing spree, and I fire nearly all of our researchers, trying to get ourselves into a positive, even if it's just by the day. I end up firing a whole bunch of engineers as well. Unfortunate, because I just didn't realize that it's going to charge us to upgrade the astronaut complex. No matter what we do here, we're gonna be in the negative. Like, I didn't need to fire all those people. It did slow us down, but I didn't need to fire them because all it took was us to complete the astronaut complex, and we are now back in the positive. I do unfortunately forget to hire all those people back, so just hold on, scientists and engineers. You'll get your jobs back soon. But ooh, yeah, I should have hired them. Anyways, I get both Heidi Weber and Stuart Kelly into the classroom to learn the proficiency of the X-15 cockpit. The X-15, that's what it is, not the Mark 1. But the X-15 completes. It gives Heidi 43 extra days on her career, which is nice. So now we're going to air launch. I am going to put in a number here that I didn't actually test. I tested 250 and 270, and one was too short and one was too far. So I'm like, all right, I'll just cut it in the middle at 260, but that is an untested number. Here we are. Heidi Weber finished her training first, so she got the glory of being the first Kerbal above the altitude previously unbroken. And she rides in the Funky Chicken, so the wings are a little less than sturdy and will be flapping around this whole time. A nice early morning launch. I love getting that dawn sunrise glow on the craft. So this is a rocket plane. It is definitely designed to go more vertically than a jet plane would, and so I'm trying to crank back on our control to get ourselves pointed more upwards, because all we need to do is bring our apoapsis higher than 40 kilometers. I'm going to bring it up there in the top left to help you keep a better eye on it. But as you see here, we failed to ignite one of our engines. I guess it's okay. It's still giving us a positive thrust to weight ratio of 1.19 in climbing, but yeah, it's not performing as according to plan as it could. So I am curious on whether or not I'm going to be able to succeed in this. And in my tests, I was able to succeed pretty easily, but that also relied on the fact that I had both engines working nominally. So it's anyone's guess here. Thankfully, I'm still going forward in our speed. We're still gaining meters per second velocity, but if we ever start slowing back down on there, then that'll tell us whether or not we're going to be able to make it. But as you see here, our apoapsis now crossed the 40-kilometer line, and we will be able to satisfy our contract. I'm going to push ourselves a little higher. We've got 30 seconds of fuel remaining, so I'm going to get ourselves up to the 50-kilometer mark so we can pull in another milestone in addition to the contract. We also have our science running, which is good. We've got only the crew report and the high altitude flight going. The telemetry we've already picked up. But as you see here, we've broken a couple records: 30 kilometers, 40 kilometers, 1,200 meters per second. And our contract is complete up until the point that we do need to land safely. So for now, our engines have burnt out. Still looks like they're firing. I think it's just burning off the residual fumes. But it is no longer providing us any thrust. So we are now a glider, And like I mentioned right at the beginning, it was an untested distance that I put in, and already I'm starting to think that I may have overshot it. I probably should have done 267 kilometers, I would say. Yep, just a little too close. We're going to start to tilt our wave down. Our prograde is already below the horizon, so we are going to be coming down pretty soon. And as our altitude crosses the 40-kilometer mark down into 39, all of our science stops working because you do not get any science below 40 kilometers in Realism Overhaul. Yeah, the angle of approach right here is pretty extreme. Even the approach that I'm at right now is unwise, and so I'm going to pull up a little bit. My plan here now is to hopefully glide our way into a U-turn to try to approach it from the other end. However, we're going 1,300 meters per second, and we are dropping like a stone. This plane, I don't know if it's the fuselage or if it's the fuel tanks, but quite heavy. So we're turning as best we can, remembering that this rocket plane was never really designed for turns. It wasn't meant to be a banking craft. Basically, it was just supposed to go up, go fast, and glide down and try to land as straight as possible. But so Heidi is pulling some maneuvers that she was not trained for in this cockpit. She is definitely unproven here. Still going relatively fast, but we're slowing down. However, it proved one turn too many for our tail fins. Thankfully, we still have the rest of our control, and we do have a little bit of pitch control on our wings, but not enough to really turn us around. If I eject Heidi, we can definitely save her, but then we'll fail the mission because you do need the cockpit intact. So instead, we pop all of our parachutes, which thankfully slows us down to 3.3 meters per second descent at a high enough altitude that we didn't end up crashing. So Heidi is going to descend ever so slowly, ever so safely, somewhere else, nowhere near the runway, but alive and well with the cockpit intact and the mission under her belt. So I gotta get better at landing in this series. I've done it before in previous series when I did X-Planes. I would have a couple messed up landings that people walked away from, but in this series, I think I've landed successfully twice now. But I will be designing better airplanes soon enough. I'm running on old technology, old designs here, and pretty soon we're going to have access to better quality technology, which will require a second look at how we build these. But because of that, Heidi now has 105 days added onto her career, so she will retire a little bit later. In case you're not aware, Kerbals retire in Realism Overhaul, and by getting them to do more interesting things, more difficult missions, they retire later. They're like, all right, I want to stick around. So now we're going to tool the Quicksilver 2, which dramatically decreases the cost by like 20,000 funds. This entire time I've been looking at it, being like, oh man, I can't afford this rocket, forgetting that we can tool it. So now that we've got it tooled, we have it into the integration list and out on the launch pad. Cloudy morning, perfect day for a launch. Ignite our engines with no problem, and release. Sometimes if you release too quickly, your craft can go a little wobbly, so it's always good to see it release calmly and let the rocket drift up. Like I mentioned, there's not a lot to say with this launch. It goes fairly according to plan. We do it the same way as we do all of our launches. And so I think I'm going to take the back seat right now to the video and let you enjoy the sights and sounds of a new track on a classic mission. Oh, and as a reminder, this is the one that is meant to go orbital. And we have a clean separation with a nice push from our separatrons. Very important to get those things away from your main body as soon as possible. So we've got a 3-minute and 10-second burn. We want to get ourselves up past our minimum perigee, which is 200 kilometers. We're going to be passing that pretty soon, but we're going to allow ourselves to go a little higher than 200. And now that we're passing 250 kilometers for our apoapsis, we're going to start tilting over more horizontally and pushing out our perigee. Oh, excuse me, I keep saying apoapsis, our apogee. This is real solar system, so it's not the same terminology as KSP. However, in the MechJeb window, you will see that does say apoapsis, but that's just MechJeb. To finish up my thought from earlier, I just want to say I really do like Artlists, and I can highly recommend it. As a content creator, it's so worth the peace of mind knowing that I'm not, unintentionally taking someone else's music or creation or not, crediting them appropriately. And as a viewer, I like giving you new music that you may not have had access to, things that aren't heard every day, top 40 artists that you may have never known. And a lot of these artists are ones that I use multiple songs for. So if you like the music in here, always check the description. I always mark what songs and artists I use in each of the episodes. So yeah, just not sponsored, just pretty proud or pretty happy with that service and everything. So I can highly recommend it if anyone's curious about whether it's worth it or if they can enjoy it. But anyways. And with that, our final stage ignites, and we are pushing our way onto orbit. We have an apogee, an apogee of 526. We burnt at 1 minute and 40 seconds to the apogee, so pretty high above the Earth right now. Our regular biological sample capsule is not making any science. It was actually a little useless to put on this rocket, but thankfully it doesn't weigh too much. But with that camera flip, we are now in orbit. Our apogee is above the 1,500 kilometers necessary, and our perigee is between the 200 and 900 necessary. So all went well with that launch. All went according to plan. And so now we just have to check it for a stable orbit, make sure that it can last 24 hours in space with some battery life left over after that time. So let's just make our way around the world and see where we are from there. And with that, it becomes nighttime, and before we know it, the sun dawns again. So let's go ahead and check on our contract window. We still have 22 hours to go because the fact that it doesn't take 24 hours to orbit the Earth. So we're going to time warp again. And then eventually, before we realize it, the contract changes from check for a certain amount of time to check for stable orbit 1 day. And that is because we no longer have any electric charge. I never tested it long enough to realize that I did not have enough batteries. So unfortunately, this mission is a bust. We did not... not only did we not complete the mission, but we don't have any way of retrieving the capsule to grab whatever science we had. So in the next episode, we're going to try to make another attempt at that. We're going to do another jet plane launch and see where we go from there. And I hope you're looking forward to it. But anyways, that's where I'm going to leave today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're looking forward for more RP-1. If you did, think about subscribing. Drop me a like. Let me know your thoughts. And I will see y'all in the next one. Take care.